Okay, and I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay, I hope everyone can see this. If anyone wants to come off mute, let me know if this looks okay. Okay, we're just gonna roll with it. All right, so again, thank you for joining us for part 2 in our elevation certificate series. We are on to section B, and this is our flood map information. So since we're talking about flood maps, we'll be taking a look at some and doing a BFE calculation. And so some of you have seen this slide from yesterday, but since some people are taking the class independently, I will go ahead and cover it again. So what is the elevation certificate and how is it used? So it has to be signed and sealed by either a licensed land surveyor or a professional engineer. Architects are not allowed to sign them in Kansas, even though the certificate instructions say that you can. It's a state-to-state thing. So architects can do floodproofing, but they can't do elevation certificates. We use these to show that sites are on natural ground above the base flood elevation. So sometimes when people see that their lowest adjacent grade is above the base flood elevation on their certificate, they are under the impression that it automatically takes them out of the floodplain. So it's important that we help people to learn that they need the LOMA paperwork to be submitted, reviewed, and approved by FEMA for them to officially come out of the floodplain and be exempt from floodplain regulations and the insurance purchase requirement. It's also used for compliance with communities. So we use these to verify that, oh, hi Steve, welcome. We use these to verify that buildings have been built in compliance with our regulations. And so that is not changing. Floodplain management is not changing. What is new is that elevation certificates are optional for flood insurance only. So we're looking at the first floor height nowadays, which is under risk rating 2.0, that's your first lowest floor above the adjacent grade. So the risk rating engine has its own first floor height tool that will be used to determine that height. And if that doesn't work, they can make assumptions about your first floor height based on what kind of foundation type you have. So if people aren't happy with those numbers, they have the option to submit an elevation certificate. And now under risk rating 2.0, they can self-certify that certificate in any flood zone that's just for insurance using sections A, B, E, and F. But that hasn't changed anything about requiring certified elevation information for regulations. Okay, so again, we're talking about flood maps today. So here is how to find the flood map for your community. So you can go to msc.fema.gov. You could search for FEMA flood map or FEMA flood map service center. It should pull it up. And this is what the homepage looks like. So if you have a digital flood map, you can use this address search bar here at the top where it says enter address place. So you could type in a city or coordinates and it should be able to pull it up if you have a digital map. So that's under the National Flood Hazard Layer or an FHL. And that's like a screenshot of what it looks like there on the right with the map that has the floodway. So if you don't have a digital map, you'll have to do the search all products, which is just a little bit harder and more tedious than the other option, but it's good to know how to do both of them. So here I have pulled up our office address in Topeka. So you can see on the bottom left with the red pin, that's our office building. It's adjacent to the floodplain. And so at the top, all I had to do was type in our address in Topeka. So if it doesn't pull up the right address right away, you might need to add in the zip codes. Like here in Lawrence, we have 3 different zip codes in the city. So that might help narrow it down and pull up the right location. It also isn't updated as frequently. So if you have like a new street or something, that might not be entered into it automatically. So you might just have to play with it and change how you're searching for it. but you should be able to find it pretty easy. And then from here, if I want to make a miniature map of my office building and make a little ferment using the National Flood Hazard layer, I can click on that dynamic map in the middle of the screen. And it'll make this little map for me. So this is the National Flood Hazard layer ferment. It's a little bit different from the more traditional ferment that I'll show you. But yeah, I still have my little red pin where my office building is. It gives me township, section, and range. It tells me the city of Topeka. The Topeka community number is right there, 205187. It tells me I'm in the zone X of minimal flood hazard. It's given me my map and panel number, my effective date, and all this information that's really useful to have. If I need to refer back to this map, this is a really convenient way to save it and have all this information in one place. And then it's created a legend for me over on the right side. So I have all my flood zones here. I got all my cross sections. If I had any coastal features, that would be on there. So this is like a miniature version of a firm. And so if I didn't have a digital map for this area, if you see where it says map panels and then there's 3 green little squares, something like that will show up to show me there's no digital data or the area is not mapped. But it also shows me when I created this map down on the bottom in red. And then I've got my scale bar, I've got a representative fraction. So this is nice to have. And it was really easy to make. As you saw, I just typed in an address and then I hit dynamic map. So if you don't have digital maps, you'll just go to search all products, and then you can go to these drop-down menus, you pick Kansas, and then what county you're looking for. So in this case, it's Shawnee County, and then the community is Topeka. So that bottom drop-down will show you all the communities that they have maps for in the MSC. And if you're looking for an area outside of city limits, the unincorporated areas, then I would pick Shawnee County unincorporated or whichever county unincorporated. And that's how you find it. So then how do we find our area? What map panel do we need out of 158 effective products? So we're going to use the index to pinpoint that location. So I've clicked on effective products and then I've gone down to firm panels. So we have 35 different firm panels for this community. So our first effective product under firm panels is IND. You can see the IND in the product ID. So that's what you want to look for. The index, IND is for index. So it's like a general location map, more like a highway map. And that way we can look at all of our map panels and figure out what we need to pick out of there. So you don't want to hit the download all next to firm panels where it says 35. That will just start you on a download to save all of the firm panels. I use the view button and you can save things from there anyways. So it's just easier to use the view buttons. And of course, we're most of the time just want to look at one firm panel at one time or maybe save one firm panel. So here's an index map example. This one is from Kansas. This one's from Lawrence, Kansas. It's a little bit of an older version, but it's a good example. You can see things really clearly. So on the title block, it gives you a list of all the panels. And then we can just look at this map and look at all the different landmarks to try to narrow down our firm panels. So we've got the Kansas River at the top, and then you've got the Santa Fe Railroad going through the center of the index map. You can see the city limits. We've got Baldwin Creek, and then we've got a highway going through the entire map. So using these types of landmarks, we can narrow down an area. And then if you see a particular area on the right side of the map, it's like a long strip, and then there's like a couple areas off to the right on panel 0089 and 0088 D, right where it says City of Lawrence. So that is actually an island annexation for our airport out here in Lawrence. So that long strip is actually the runway, and then that area to the left is for the airplane. For the airplanes, it's the hangars. So if someone was building around this area and they told you they were, building just east of the airport, you could narrow down the panel that you're looking for. It would probably be the 00890. So you can see all the panels start with 20045, and all the panels in Douglas County start with that. The C is for county-wide. And so when we're looking at stuff in Shawnee County, it all starts with 20177C. So I'll show you that. So then you can just go back to your list once you've narrowed down what panel you're looking for, and then you find that number, and then you can just open it. So here's the firm panel. So we're back in Topeka now. This is the firm panel that has my office building in it. So you open it and this is what it takes you to. And it is hard to see anything in any detail from this far out. And of course, we're only focusing on one small area at a time, usually for development or something like that. So what we can do is click on the ferment button, create a ferment, and then it'll let you, create your ferment, and then you can download it as a PDF or a PNG file. And this is something that you would need for a LOMA that you could attach it to. You can attach it to a permit with the elevation certificate. So yeah, it's a good option. So select page size. So this is important if you have paper maps and you're making a ferment. If you print it out, you want to make sure that you are viewing it or printing it in the same size that you're saving it in, because you don't want to distort the map scale. So that's important to keep in mind. So I've selected my size here. I usually keep it at 8 by 11. It's pretty typical document size. Then you just hit next and it'll show you the select print area. So that's when I take that green box and I just drop it over the map wherever my area of interest is. And then once I'm happy with that, I can just hit next again. And then the scale and north arrow box will open up. It'll turn green. So you can see it's grayed out right now, but it's over the north arrow and the scale bar. So then you can just adjust that how you like it. You hit next, and then the gray box over the title block will turn green, and you can adjust that as you like. And then once you hit next, you hit preview ferment. So here's the preview. So if you like it, you can go ahead and download it. If you don't like it, you can go back and make adjustments. So this is nice to have. You can print it out, you can file it away geographically. So if you had a new subdivision area that was being built in your community, it's nice to have this, and you can just go back to it and pull it out whenever. So like I said, PDF or PNG file, everything here at the state, we use PDF. PDFs are easier to work with, especially if you're sending it to multiple people. So it's just easier that way, I think. Yeah. So here's the full page view of what it looks like. So there's Southwest Winding Road where the office is. So you can see they put it over an aerial photograph, which is nice. And then in this format, we have the floodplain the floodplain areas are outlined in blue. And then you have blue stippling or blue dots for the zone AE. And then you can see the border within that to the white striped area that follows the stream channel, that is the floodway. And then there's also a black outline, which is the shaded zone X on the outside of that, which is not regulatory, but it's nice to know these moderate flood risk areas. So anything within the blue borders is going to be considered in the floodplain. I guess we have had someone who was inside these borders, but thought that there was no dots touching the structure, so it didn't count, which I don't even know how that happens. But yeah, anything within the blue lines is going to be considered in the floodplain or the floodway with that separate area. Okay, so here we are, section B of the elevation certificate. So what's great is that lines 1 through 8 can be found just using the map. So it's really nice. So B1, we have the NFIP community name and community number. So that would be something we could find right there in the title block. So we have City of Topeka and then the community number. So I'll flip back to this full page view. So on the title block here, in the center of it, you can see where it gives you the two community names, Shawnee County, because we're in Shawnee County, and then Topeka is underneath that. And then to the right of that, it gives you the number, and that's your community number. It's a 6-digit number. Topeka is 205187. So that's what I would put in B1 is Topeka, and then that 6-digit number. And then the county name. So that was also where I showed you in the title block. It gives you the county name. And then of course the state is Kansas. We don't usually see problems here as much with the county name in the state. Sometimes people leave the community number off in B1. So then, so yeah, that community number is part of the database. It's how we separately identify each community. You can look in the community status book from FEMA as well. That also gives you the CID or the community ID number. So some people do get fooled by this abbreviation. So up here where it says panel 192 of 450 in bold, it's easy to make that mistake, but that is an abbreviation for the full map and panel number. So for the full map and panel number, you're looking down here, down where the FEMA seal is and just above the effective date. So the full map and panel number is 20177C0192E. And so that's what they're looking for in B4, where it says map/panel number. So a lot of times we see people put in the abbreviated number and that's wrong. So don't accept it, or a lot of community officials just go ahead and fill out this section for the surveyors in their communities. It just kind of helps avoid any mistakes or delays. So you'll put that full number in there, except for the E on the end. That is for B5, and that's for the suffix. So that letter tells you how many times the map panel has been revised. Okay, and then for B6, the firm index date. So you'll go back to your index list or your list of effective products under your firm panels, and then your index is at the top and it'll tell you your effective date. But don't assume it's always the same as the firm panel effective date. We've seen that a lot, and sometimes they're not the same. So I'll show you a couple slides down how and why they could be different, and you should check for that. But for B7, firm panel effective or revised date, we have that here. It's September 29th, 2011. And then we have B8 for the flood zone. So we don't actually find that in the legend. We go to the actual map and then we look for the particular location. So the structure or the property that we're looking at, and then that will determine the flood zone. So we'll look at some common mistakes, but just all of that, we've gotten through most of section B just by looking at our map and our title block. So again, here's the NFIP community number will be right there in the center. It's kind of smaller, but that's what you're looking for B1, and then map and panel number should be the full number down there at the bottom for B4. And of course, if these are correct, don't accept them, just help them get it fixed. So here's some common problems that we see. B1, like I said, people will put the community name and not the number. B4 will have that abbreviated 3-digit panel number instead of the full number. B5, they leave out the suffix or they put it all in B4 without adding it to B5. So B6 could be incorrect because they just assume it's the same as the firm panel effective date when another panel has been revised, so the index gets updated and the firm panel doesn't. So you want to check those dates separately. And then B8, sometimes people don't look at the flood map for that information. They're looking from another source, maybe from a bank document, and we don't want to do that. Just go to the flood map and it should be pretty clear what the zone is. And usually you're looking for some kind of zone A. You know, we're dealing with floodplain issues, so most of the elevation certificates we get are for structures that are in the floodplain. So if you see something out of the floodplain, you might want to, double check that, why you're getting a zone X. I mean, people do it, but, just something to look out for. And then B9, definitely one of the biggest problems is a rounded off base flood elevation. So that we definitely can't accept. It needs to be within 1/10 of a foot. So we need that decimal point on the end. So if you get an elevation certificate that doesn't have that on it and it's a rounded off number, then the person didn't take out the flood insurance study and they didn't properly calculate it or retrieve a base flood elevation from another source correctly. So we'll go through that, but here's the point about lines B6 and 7 not always being the same date. So this is for the city of Americus. This is in Lyon County. So Hartford, which is a city in Lyon County, had a levee that was recertified. So they revised their firm panel. So that was revised, and the index for the county was revised in 2010. So that has nothing to do with the city of Americus. The Americus panels did not get updated, so they have nothing to do with that revision. So they have different effective dates, and that's why you should check to make sure. They could be different. So you can find this in the map notes, and you can also find it on the firms or the firmettes, the effective dates of stuff. Oops, I went back one. Okay, so here's, line 8, B8, our flood zone. So like I said, my office isn't actually in the floodplain, but I've drawn arrows over to the adjacent floodplain, and they'll be clearly labeled. The labels adjust with the firmet, so everything should be very clearly labeled, and it should be pretty easy to tell what flood zone you're in. Okay, so here's the base flood elevation line. Again, if you have a detailed study and a flood insurance study, that is what you should be using. If you don't have a flood insurance study, we'll talk about getting a BFE for that after this. So here is a paper map for MET for Butler County unincorporated, and I've put a red dot in the general vicinity of our area of interest. So we've also gone to Google Maps and we've just put together a basic street map for that. And I like Google over other mapping browsers that you could use, like Bing. I think Google, it's just the addresses tend to match up better with other sources, and they have a measuring tool right in the web page that's easy to use. So we've made a Google Street Map with the address, so there we can pinpoint the location, and then we can find it on our paper maps by using a nearby landmark. So this is right next to Southwest Dry Creek Road. So we can use a landmark like that and measure the distance from that road or an intersection with that road all the way over to our property location in the Google Maps, take that measurement, and then measure the same distance on our paper maps, using that map scale to better pinpoint our location to the best of our abilities on the paper map. So I did keep Steve's example of a paper map base flood elevation measurement in this presentation, just because I haven't covered it before. And I have another class that I did that goes over doing this digitally in GIS with a digital map. We also have another recording with Bill Pace in our office who does a base flood elevation measurement in GIS with digital maps. So, if you'd like to see how to do that, I'd be happy to send those to you, or I could work with you one-on-one. That's why I kept this paper map examples. Lots of people in Kansas still have paper maps. So, yep. So another thing to notice about the paper map is you can see the squiggly lines that are bordering either side of our area of interest. So you can see 1279 and 1277. So you should keep those in mind. Those are the rounded off base flood elevations that we don't want to use, and we don't want to see them on elevation certificates. What's more important is that cross-section M and cross-section L are bordering either side of our area of interest, and that is going to help us to calculate our base flood elevation. Okay, so what Steve has done here is he's, like I said, we're measuring from a common landmark to our property location as best as we can. So he's done that and he's marked it off with the X. And then he's taken a string and he's colored it pink just to help us see it a little bit better. So then he's laid it out very carefully along the stream channel. So we're supposed to be measuring along the stream channel. That's important. So he's taken the very end of the string and has it lined up with cross-section L, and then follows the stream channel all the way back up to our upstream cross-section M. And he's marked off where that is. So we need to measure from our upstream cross-section M all the way down to the upstream corner of our structure as best as we can, where that corner is parallel to the stream. So you want to do that as best as you can, because that distance is going to be really important when we determine the base flood elevation. So as best as you can, upstream corner, distance from its parallel point with the stream up to the upstream cross section. So that distance. Again, I'm willing to work with anyone offline about this if it's confusing, but that's the distance that we're looking for. And we're always using upstream numbers, never the downstream numbers, never the downstream corner of the house, never the downstream cross section. So what Steve is showing us here is that some engineers that work with us talk about overbank flooding and how when the water is flooding out of the stream channels that it flows straight across the land and it doesn't follow the stream channel. However, that's not really the official method of doing this. So what we should be doing is trying to follow the stream channel as best as we can. So in this particular case, there's not a lot of meandering between cross-section M and our property location, but if there were, we're definitely trying to measure along the stream channel. So it's going to add a little more distance, and that's important. So do your best to measure along the stream channel. So when we measured that distance, we determined that it was about a third of the distance between the two cross sections M and L. And so this is our flood insurance study flood profile. So you can find these towards the back of the flood insurance study. You want to make sure you're finding the right stream channel. So they're all labeled by the stream channel's name. And then you find the appropriate cross sections. So between our two cross sections of interest here, you can see there are 6 boxes or 6 lines or tick marks. So a third of that distance is about 2 tick marks or 2 lines down from cross section M. So another thing to notice about these stream profiles is that they run upstream to downstream from right to left. So the right side is upstream and the left side is downstream, which is why M is on the right side and L is on the left side, which might be kind of counterintuitive because we want to read from left to right. So that's something to keep in mind about the direction of flow on these profiles. So our upstream corner of our house is about 2 lines down from cross section M. So we're going to put a mark right there so we know where it is, and then we're going to draw a line all the way straight up through all of these lines. So the line that you see going diagonally around 1260 across the middle of the screen, the little braided part, that's the stream bed. And so when you go all the way up to these other lines, those are your flood frequencies. So they're all different types of broken lines. They're all in different patterns. And then there's going to be a little legend off to the right side that tells you which flood frequency is which. So they have like the 10, the 50, the 100, and the 500 year flood frequencies mapped on here. So this is just like our map, but it's presented in a graphical form. So once we've drawn the line that's 2 boxes down from M, we've gone all the way up through the flood profiles, we find the 1% annual chance line. We're going to mark off that intersection, and then we're going to do our best to draw a straight line horizontally from that intersection all the way across to the left where we have elevation in feet. And that's going to give you your base flood elevation. So we're about 8 boxes up on that line from 1270. And then we're just a little bit above that 8th box, which is why we're calling it 1278.2. So we have that off to the side with the arrow. So some community officials just go ahead and round up a little bit and call it 1278.5 just to be safe, which is fine. I mean, it's only 0.3 of an inch, and it's not that expensive for someone to elevate their house that much more. It's not that bad, and it might actually keep floodwater out of the first floor of their house or something like that later on down the line. So we're fine with, people just rounding up a little bit to be safe. We would have called it 1278.5 if we were halfway through the box. And if it was a little bit higher than that, we might call it 1279.0. So you can see it's not entirely precise, but it should be very close. So you just do your best to get it as close as you can. So then we can check our work here by going towards the front where we have our floodway data tables. And then you find, again, the correct flooding source. So we're looking at Dry Creek. And then it's giving us our cross sections for that stream. And then you go over to the regulatory column. And then we've got 1277.4 for cross section L. And then for M, we have 1279.0. And again, M is the upstream cross section. So 1278.2 is in between these two numbers. So that checks out, it looks correct and reasonable. So if we got a number that was outside of that range, then we've probably made a mistake and we need to go back and look at what we've done and get that corrected. So I did this once and it was way off, and I was looking at 2 different streams. So I had used the wrong floodway data table or the wrong stream. So that's why I reiterate making sure you're looking at the right stream. So yeah, just make sure that's right. So here's the actual elevation certificate for that property that we were looking at in Butler County. So if you look at B9 here, we've got it zoomed in on. It says 1277. And if you recall, that was the downstream rounded off base flood elevation number that was on the firm. So we know that they just kind of looked at the map and then plucked off that number and put it in here, which is not good. Again, you never use the downstream number. So C2A, the top of their bottom floor, is at 1278.1. So we already know that based on the base flood elevation that we calculated, it's way too low. It's like 1/10 below. And then everyone here in Kansas has the 1 foot above rule of freeboard. So it's 1.1 feet below the level of compliance, and that's a problem. So that's why we don't want to accept any rounded off base flood elevations or use the firm for that. We always need to pull out the flood insurance study and calculate it. And again, measure from the upstream corner of the house to the upstream cross section. So we have had situations like this where the lowest adjacent grade was actually higher than the base flood elevation, and it qualified for a LOMA, and it did help with certain compliance issues that we've seen before. So you can look at that and see if it would be eligible. However, if you can see it on this elevation certificate, that's at 1274 for both of them for the lowest adjacent grade. So it's definitely not going to qualify for that, but it is a trick that we've used before, and it's typically safe because if the lag is that high, then it shouldn't be bothered by the base flood water. Okay. So line B10 asks for your source of base flood elevation. So that would be the flood insurance study in that example. But if you don't have a flood insurance study, like in a zone A, you might be able to use us to help you out and get that. So for B10, it would be State Division of Water Resources, developed DFIRM. So if you have a new enough map on our website that I'll show you, our Kansas floodplain viewer, we have the cross sections that are not on the official map that are in the A zones on there because they were good enough to develop the map so we can use them as the best available data and we have them ready for surveyors to use. If not, of course, we have the BFE portal. All you need to do is register, log in, you create an account, and then you can just draw a polygon around your building and we can calculate it and we'll send you a letter. So you want to check where we have this available, the LiDAR, and we're getting base level engineering for all of Kansas in about 2 more years. So it's most of the state. And you can also use the base flood elevation portal to just give you a good idea about LOMA eligibility for a building. So right where it says area of interest and there's a little red polygon to the right of that, it'll show you the LiDAR value. So yeah, you could check on possible LOMA eligibility and maybe compliance problems. So I do have a little handout on this and how to use it and draw the polygon. So it's pretty easy. You can search for your property and then you just use the drawing tool to create a polygon and you get it as close to the building footprint as you possibly can. You just double click to finish it. And then if you're looking to request a LOMA, you put that in your purpose in this little questionnaire area off to the right. And then you can hit save. And then that little message that's on the bottom right says, thank you, DWR will be in touch, and it's been saved. So it's a pretty simple process. And then you get a letter like this. So your submission will be reviewed by people in our office. It's not an automated system. So if there happens to be 2 to 3 different flooding sources, so if you were maybe at the convergence of 2 different streams, we will be calculating 2 different base flood elevations to find which one is higher that could possibly affect the property, and then we use that one. And then we have this official letter that's sent to you, and it can be attached to LOMAs or to permits. So it gives the lowest adjacent grade. So here's a zoom in on that language. It gives the lowest adjacent grade, the effective date of the map, the base flood elevation for the property, and it tells you the datum. So that's going to be really important when we talk about datums in section C. But we have 2 different datums, so I will get into that. But this is a really useful service. It's a free service. So if you need a handout, let me know. And you can also go to the US Army Corps of Engineers to get a letter. This usually costs around $350. It might be a little bit cheaper if they've already calculated something nearby. So they used to require that new cross sections be shot for a survey, but now we can use LiDAR and it saves money. It's a little bit less accurate than shooting new cross sections, but it's pretty effective. I think it's like within 1 foot. But you could use this as the base flood elevation with this letter. And it's commonly done more out in the West with older maps, but we have a lot more of that base level engineering now. Not the entire state just yet, but getting pretty close. So you'd probably want to check with us first before you do this. And then I do have the flood fact sheet. So this one's kind of out of date. It has our older address on it. I couldn't find a more updated version, but if you want this or if you need to get in touch with someone, just let me know. I could help you. So the Data Access and Support Center. So this is a website that has publicly downloadable different types of GIS data, LiDAR data. It's a really great resource. And so the LiDAR data from 2018 is up. So we have new LiDAR that's coming out. A third of the counties were reflown last year. So we have to continuously update the LiDAR, because as development happens, like if they add additional lanes to a highway, then we have to account for that development because it will change things. So it has to be reflown. But DASC is really a helpful resource. There's GIS layers, like jurisdictional layers, transportation, and they have imagery. So it's a good resource. And then here's another map from DASC on LiDAR updates. So yeah, if you ever want to check out that website. But yeah, this is our base flood elevation portal. Again, I have this flyer, and it's really easy to sign up and make requests. So if you ever have questions about LiDAR information and our office and base flood elevations, then Joanna and Tara from our mapping team, our mapping specialist and mapping coordinator, are the people to talk to. If you ask me about it, I'll just send you back to them. Okay, so here is our Kansas floodplain viewer that I had mentioned earlier. So you can see the counties outlined in green that have newer maps. Those are the effective digital firms. So you don't have to go to the base flood elevation portal for those. And like I said, we have the cross sections for certain A zones in these areas. So I'll show you that. But again, it's based on the data that was used to create the maps. So they're best available data, and we have them right there for surveyors to take from the map. So if you notice the print function, it's really tiny in this picture, but it's on the bottom left, right under draw and measurement. So if you click that, it kind of makes a ferment sort of thing, like, yeah, pretty much our version of one at the state. So this is nice. It's a screenshot that can also be attached to a LOMA or an elevation certificate. And what's important is the disclaimer statement at the bottom that base flood are approximate elevations developed by Kansas Department of Agriculture. And then, so this is the approximate A zone. I have circled the A in the legend at the bottom to show you that this is the zone that we're looking at. It's not an AE zone, but we have the cross sections in there. So that's helpful to have. And this is a little section area in Lawrence that I've pulled it out. And it has, the date that I made the map and scale bar. So it's just as useful as a ferment, I would say. And then here is the mapping status. So we have, these are all the mapping progress that we have in the state of Kansas as of December of last year. So this map is a little bit out of date. Some of the maps that are labeled as preliminary here have gone on past that stage, and now I'm helping them to adopt their new map products. So we are working diligently to get everyone digital maps. It's a longer process. So it's going to take a while before we get everyone out of paper maps, but it will happen. Okay, so right, our elevation data. So right, the datum from the base flood elevation calculation is going to be really important, and we want our datums throughout the certificate to match up. So we have the North American vertical datum of 1988, which is more commonly used nowadays. The maps since 2005 have this datum used, and then maps from the 90s and that kind of era have the National Geodetic vertical datum from 1929. So these two datums are very different, and we do not want to be mixing datums. And yeah, for B12, line B12, our last line, won't apply in Kansas. We don't have any coastal barrier resources systems, which are areas that are protected by sand dunes and they're coastal. So we don't have that. So we don't have to worry about that one. But we want to know what datum our base flood elevation is in, which we can find on the maps. We can also find it on the flood insurance study. So please definitely double check datums for elevation information, because it's an apples to oranges comparison when we're talking about, these numbers. So in Emporia, Kansas, it's about 4.8 inches, which is pretty close to 5 inches. And that's a big difference when we're talking about, compliance and elevating and freeboard. So if we were looking at that elevation certificate that I showed you from that property where we calculated the base flood elevation, if we used that rounded number that was all downstream and we were in the wrong datum and we were an additional 5 inches off, that would be really bad. So section C, make sure that the base flood elevation is the same as those elevation, the same. Because out in Western Kansas, it can be as much as 1.5 feet difference between the two datums. And so if the datums were converted, also that should be noted in the comments section. So look for that. There's a very easy website for surveyors to be able to make that conversion, but that's really important to look out for. And then we also have this to look for, that corresponding information from section A. So lines 1 through 3, our property information should be exactly the same from every page. So this will help if your pages get separated, that we can find them all and put them back together again. It also helps to prevent any forgery. So we have had some sneaky property owners that went and took a page from a different elevation certificate for a different property and tried to change some dates and, help themselves, I guess, with their elevation information. And that is not good. Yeah, that conversion software is now called NCAT. And yeah, I could send you a handout on that if you like, or more information about that. So yeah, make sure this part is filled out, that it matches completely, that there aren't any typos, because that could make issues. So you want to check on that. Okay, and then FEMA also has this bulletin, FEMA 467-1. So it's like 18 different frequently asked questions on elevation certificates. So that's useful. I could send this to you, or you could do a general search for it. And then we used to have the insurance agent's lowest floor guide on this page, but that's not really accurate anymore. Like I said, we're using first floor height, and that's the lowest floor that's above the adjacent grade. So some of you saw this yesterday, but I will go ahead and reiterate it. So for a slab on grade, so that's your diagrams 1A, 1B, and 3, it's going to be your first floor of the building. And then if you have a basement, a 2A, a 2B, or a 4, it's the first floor that's above the basement. And if you have a 5, which is elevated without an enclosure, it's just your first elevated floor. And then if you have a 6, 7, 8, or 9, the same rules apply to all the 4 diagrams. They're going to use the floor of the enclosure if it's a pre-firm building in any zone, or if it's not in a special flood hazard area, if it's in an approximate floodplain, such as an unnumbered A zone, A99, or an AO zone, AR/AO, or an unnumbered V zone, it's the floor of the enclosure. And then they'll use the elevated floor if it's a post-firm building and it's in a floodplain, such as the numbered A zone, AE, AH, AR, and then the combination of floodplain zones that you see there at the bottom, or a numbered V zone or a VE zone. So that's the differentiation. So it's going to depend for those buildings where they are and when they were built, under risk grading 2.0. And then we have this, I have a really helpful handout for citizens on how to hire a land surveyor, what kind of questions they should be asking. So this site lets you, find a list by county. And so some surveyors will come to your area, but they have to drive a long distance, and then you kind of have to pay for that drive or for their time while they're driving. So you might not want to do that. You want to ask if they have had experience. You can ask them if they've taken these classes. Not really, but you want to be a smart consumer or help citizens be smart consumers. So thinking about pricing and the timing as in scheduling. So if you're waiting to foreclose on a building within 2 to 3 weeks, that's an important factor, because this isn't, something you can have done in the same day. It's going to take a little while for scheduling. So you want to shop around and definitely leave yourself enough time to hire someone that's within your price range and all of your other concerns. Yeah, if they trained with me, then their quality. And then other than that, questions? I've been kind of looking at the chat, but okay, and I will actually go ahead and stop the recording.